By the time I was 30, I tried and failed building my business as a financial advisor. I racked up credit card debt funding my ambitions as I squeaked by. And by a lot of metrics, I was behind. I was nowhere near where I wanted to be and where I thought I should be. Now you may feel behind like I did, and that pestering feeling may be creeping into your thoughts sometimes. Maybe it's while you're out for a walk, maybe it's while you're driving into work. It's that feeling of unease about whether you're where you should be for what you want to accomplish in the future. Are you already behind? Is it too late to catch up? Are you ruining your chances to have an easy financial future and even make it to retirement based on the decisions you're making right now today? Now, I'm gonna give you hard figures in this video so you know exactly how much money you need to have right now invested in order to hit certain goals in your future. Some of you are gonna have really dreamy goals. You're gonna wanna retire in 10 years, 15 years. And so for those of you who are like that, I'm gonna address that. And then also there's many of you probably watching who just wanna have a normal life, normal retirement, maybe 30 years down the road, 6 years old is when you're ready to retire. I'm gonna start with the dreamy goals. I'm gonna start with those who have more ambition so that you know where you need to be right now to hit those goals. And they're a lot harder than, of course, the normal retirement, which is gonna be like 30 years down the road. So if you're in your 20s, if you're in your early 30s, we're gonna talk about where you need to be. But let's start with my cousin who's actually in his 20s. So one day, my cousin buys a couch. A really nice Windsor tan L-shaped leather couch. Now my cousin, look, he's not a planner. He's a lot of good things. He's not a planner. So he has the $1,500 couch delivered to his apartment, goes up the service elevator, and he goes to bring it inside his apartment, and what happens? The couch is way too big to fit inside his door. He lives in a high rise. The kid can't get the thing up into like a window or something like that, so what's he do? Well, he tries to shove the couch inside the door. In doing so, he puts a giant hole inside the couch, and now he can't return it, and he's basically out $1,500. So sometimes in life, you gotta plan a little bit. You gotta do the measurements. You gotta think of the math. You gotta do some numbers. So let's go through the numbers or the measurements to help you understand where you need to be right now to get to certain goals if you're around 30 years old. Okay, so first number, $100,000. This is the amount of income I'm gonna assume that you make as a household. Now, if you don't make that much, don't worry about it. I'm gonna show you how you can adjust it for how much money you make, but most of these examples, all of them are gonna be $100,000 of income. 8%. That's the average rate of return we're gonna assume that you can make in the stock market over your investing lifetime. 15% to 30%. This is the percentage of your income that you're gonna need to save each year. So for example, if I use 15% in a scenario and you make $100,000 a year in income, you need to save $15,000 a year. 3.5% to 4%. This is how much money you're going to be taking out of your investment, how much you distribute from your investments while you're retired. So for example, if you're able to save up $1 million in your investment portfolio and you take out 3.5% every year, that's $35,000. This is how much money you need to have right now invested in order to retire in 10 years. So check this out. So this is the city of Manila. And in order to retire in 10 years, to me, the most realistic way to do it is something called geographic arbitrage. So if you really want to retire in 10 years, I think one of the only ways that makes sense, unless you're able to drastically increase your income, geographic arbitrage is probably the way to go. So obviously, I live here in Manila. The thing about living here is that you can retire here on a lot less money than in the US. So geographic arbitrage, you make money in a higher cost of living place, you save a bunch of money, and then you take that money to somewhere that's not high cost of living, like the Philippines, and you live a nice long life here in retirement. Here are the numbers, $30,000. That's the amount of money you're gonna need to live in a place like the Philippines every year. 28.5 times. You're gonna take how much money you need every year to live on, and you're gonna multiply it by 28.5. That's gonna give you your retirement number, the amount of money you need to get to. $855,000. That's what our $30,000 times 28.5 gets us to. So the next part is 30%. That's how much money you're gonna need to save every single year of your income so that you can get to $855,000 per year. So in order to do everything I just said, to get where you need to be able to do a geographic arbitrage, live off $30,000 per year in the Philippines or place equivalent to here, you need $195,000 invested right now. If you do have that much money, you make 100K, you could save 30% of your income every year, make 8%, and in 10 years, you could potentially retire over here in the Philippines. Now when it comes to this particular point, there are a few things that you need to know. I use 30,000. I think that could give you a great life over here. I wouldn't go much lower than 22,000. To figure this out for yourself, go to the NerdWallet retirement calculator. This example is showing how much you might need to have at $50,000 per year. At one of the lower amounts that you would want a geographic arbitrage. Living on $2,100 in retirement and what you would need to get there. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, next scenario. You don't want to move abroad, you don't want to live in another country, okay, but you still are okay with maybe living a more minimalist life. You're gonna be able to get there in 15 years in this scenario. So we're gonna start with 50%. This is the percentage of your income you're gonna live on 15 years down the road when you're ready to retire. You make $100,000, you're gonna live on $50,000 a year, 28.5 times. Just like before, this is the number that's gonna help us figure out how much money we need invested when we get to retirement. $1,425,000. So that's how much money we need to have when we get to retirement, when we're ready to retire. Okay, so how do we get to this? Is it gonna be hard? All right, so 30%. Same as before, you need to save 30% of your income starting now, going forward for the next 15 years. It's not easy, but it's achievable. In order to accomplish all of this and retire in 15 years, you need $195,000, just like before in our example before. The difference here is you retire in 15 years instead of 10 years. Now, by the way, there is a name for this. This is called lean FIRE. FIRE meaning financial independence, retire early. You're basically living on a lot less money than you're making, 50% less. So if you're more of a minimalistic person, you're okay with like spending less money, not having a big grandiose life, you might be okay with doing this. And plus $50,000 a year living on, I think it's possible for a lot of people. We're continuing with the aggressive approaches here. So here's the next one. I promise you it's gonna get easier later in the video. These are kind of the more aggressive ones. So 15 years, same deal as the things we've gone over before. This is how long it's gonna take you to retire in 15 years. 70%, the percent of your income that you're going to live on in retirement. 28.5, the same number we used before. For someone who makes $100,000 per year, you're gonna need about $1.9 million in 15 years. A little grandiose for a lot of people watching this. It's gonna get easier, but you know, if you're aggressive, this is for you. Here's what's different about this scenario of all the other scenarios. $0. The amount of money that you're gonna need to save every single year for the next 15 years. But Robbie, what do you mean? How do I not need to save to get to the retirement number? Well, in this scenario, you're going to actually save up enough so that you never have to save again. So if you have this much money right now, you don't need to add any more to be able to retire in 15 years. I need to make 8% in the stock market. That number, $600,000. If you're sitting here right now watching this video and you have $600,000 and you're okay to retire on 70% of your $100,000 income, congrats. You can just literally stop investing in the stock market and it's going to grow to your $1.9 million you're gonna need. Okay, so it's getting dark, so I need to get a light. Hold on. Okay. We have another aggressive one. This is the last aggressive one. So if you're getting tired of the aggressive ones, I think the next one after this is going to be, well, I think it's gonna make you feel pretty good about yourself. But first, 15 years. This will also be a 15-year time period till you retire, like the ones I just talked about. 100%. The percentage of your income that you're gonna retire on in this scenario is 100% of your income. I'm using $100,000 as the example. You're going to retire and live on $100,000. 28.5 times, same multiples before. You need $2.85 million invested to get to this point. How do we get there? Well, we moderate to aggressively save 30% of our income every single year. So that's $30,000 a year if you make 100 grand. So how much do you need right now to accomplish this? Because it sounds like a lot, right? Well, this is actually gonna be $640,000 that you need. I know, I said it was gonna be aggressive also, but this one's actually called Fat Fire. So if you do not have quite a bit of money saved up like all the previous examples I just went over, here is the next one for you. You're going to have a more normal route to retirement. Not 10 years, not 15 years, you're not retiring early, you're retiring on a pretty normal time period. If you're 30 years old, you retire at 60. That's actually pretty early. So in order to do this, our first number, 70%. You're going to live on 70% of your pre-retirement income. So $100,000, that would mean $70,000 a year. 25 times. You're gonna multiply 70% of your income by 25 to get to the amount of money that you need when you retire. This is less than the 28.5 we talked about before. And this is because when you go to a normal retirement, you won't be retired as long. You see, when you retire earlier, you gotta be more conservative. When you retire a bit later in life, you can actually use 25 times. So that actually is a benefit for you. $1.75 million. This is how much money you're gonna have to grow your investment account to be able to retire 30 years from now, live on your 70% of your income. How to get there? Now, the whole time we've been talking about 30% of your income. You gotta save 30% of your income, super aggressive. Well, not too aggressive, but pretty aggressive, right? 15%. A much easier to accomplish goal. 15% of your income is what you're going to invest over the next 30 years of your life. Make $100,000 a year, That's $15,000 every year you're investing. Now, how much money do you need to have right now in order to accomplish this? In order to basically retire in 30 years? The answer is $0. I bet this comes as a relief after I've been throwing around numbers like $200,000, $600,000 that you need already invested. Well, guess what? If you start right now, you don't need any money. Now, what you do need is you need to be able to invest that 15% of your income every year for the next 30 years. For a lot of people, that is actually hard. You have kids, you have your mortgage, maybe you have some debt, maybe you have student loans, maybe it's, there's drags on your finances. It's hard to get that amount of money saved every year, but that's the goal. If you can save 15% of your income, you don't need to have any money already saved up in order to retire 30 years down the road. Don't be like my cousin, buy a couch without doing the measurements. Think about how much money you need now. Go to that retirement calculator, calculate how much you need, and start planning now while you're still young to figure out how much money you're going to need when you're retired. I promise you, you're gonna be happy you did. Now you know the secret of how much money you need to have to get to your goals to retire in the future. But I left something out. Are you really behind? Take a look at this video here to find out.